It was one of those summer afternoons when the air felt heavy and the ground seemed to burn under the sun. The heat shimmered across the large parking lot, and people moved quickly, wanting to escape into the safety of air-conditioned cars and homes. In the middle of that endless row of vehicles, a man in his late 40s walked slowly toward his car. He was calm, collected, and carried himself with the steady discipline of someone who had lived through many challenges before. Years of service in the military had taught him how to notice small details that others ignored. And on this day, those instincts would not let him pass by without seeing something that others overlooked. As he reached for his keys, a faint sound caught his attention. At first, it was so soft that he thought it was just the buzzing of insects. But when he paused, he heard it again, a weak, muffled cry. His body tensed. He turned his head, scanning the lines of parked cars, listening carefully. The sound came again, sharper this time, and his eyes locked on a vehicle 2 rows over. The windows were rolled up tightly, and inside, he spotted a small figure moving. His heart dropped when he realized it was a baby, strapped into a car seat, face flushed red from the heat. For a moment, he froze, hoping maybe someone would appear and unlock the car. But the minutes dragged, and no one came. Sweat trickled down his own forehead, and the thought of what that child was enduring inside made him feel restless. He stepped closer, shielding his eyes from the glare on the glass, and saw the baby's tiny fists waving weakly. The child's cheeks glistened with sweat, lips trembling with cries that were growing fainter. Every second that passed felt heavier. He glanced around, searching for the mother or anyone who might be responsible, but all he saw were people walking by, busy with their shopping bags. Pretending not to notice, the veteran's chest tightened. He had seen danger before in many forms, on battlefields, in training drills, during missions where hesitation meant lives were lost. And now, though he stood in a peaceful parking lot, the same sense of urgency filled him. His mind raced with questions. How long had the baby been in there? How much longer could the child survive in this suffocating heat? He called out loudly, asking if anyone knew who owned the car, but no one answered. A couple of bystanders slowed down to look, but instead of acting, they only whispered and kept moving. Some pulled out their phones to record, but no one stepped forward to help. He could feel his pulse rising. His eyes returned to the baby, whose cries were turning into soft whimpers. He knew that was a bad sign. Weak cries meant the child was losing energy, perhaps even strength to breathe. A memory flashed across his mind, one from years ago when he had been trained to act fast under pressure. The instructors had drilled it into him. Hesitation could cost a life. And right now, he realized that the same rule applied. This was not just about being a bystander. This was about saving a life. He took a deep breath, gripping his keys tightly, and stepped back from the car. His thoughts flickered to the risks. What if the mother arrived and accused him of something? What if people misunderstood? But the next moment, he shook the doubts away. All those worries meant nothing compared to the danger of losing a child in front of his eyes. He felt the weight of responsibility pressing on him. He knew he could not walk away, not today, not when the sound of a struggling baby rang so clearly in his ears. Still, before making any move, he leaned closer to the window again. The baby's small chest was rising and falling quickly, breaths shallow and rapid. That sight pushed him past any hesitation. His jaw tightened, and he whispered to himself words he had spoken many times in the past. Do the right thing, no matter the cost. It was something he had carried with him since his service days, and it guided him now, even here, in a quiet parking lot where no one else seemed willing to act. He straightened up, his eyes scanning once more for the parent, hoping against hope that someone would come running, keys in hand. But the silence around the car told him the truth. He was alone in this moment, and the responsibility rested on him. People glanced at him curiously but kept their distance, as though they expected him to solve the situation while they stayed safe on the sidelines. He felt the pressure of their eyes, the weight of judgment. But none of that mattered as much as the small life trapped in that hot metal box. His heart pounded as he made his decision. He had faced danger before, but this was different. This was about innocence, about protecting someone too young to even cry out loudly for help. The child's survival depended on what he would do in the next few minutes. And though he was just a stranger in that parking lot, he knew that this was the moment that would define his day, and perhaps even the rest of his life. Asterisk. The man's chest rose and fell with a sharp breath as he stood by the car, the sound of the baby's weak cries echoing in his ears. The sun beat down mercilessly, making the air around the vehicle feel like an oven. His mind raced as he looked at the child inside, tiny fists twitching, cheeks flushed a dangerous shade of red. He had already called out for the mother. He had already waited. Nobody came. Every second felt like sand slipping through an hourglass, and the thought that this child might not have another few minutes hit him like a punch to the gut. His military training had prepared him for moments of crisis, moments when instinct mattered more than hesitation. That training took over now. He balled his hand into a fist, then stopped himself, realizing he needed to break the glass without hurting the baby. His eyes swept over the car quickly, choosing the window farthest from the child's seat. He spotted a heavy tool left on the ground nearby, probably dropped from someone's shopping cart earlier. He grabbed it without a second thought, his knuckles tightening around the cold metal. The crowd that had begun to gather watched in silence. A few muttered among themselves, some holding up their phones to record, but nobody stepped forward to take responsibility. Their eyes followed his every move as if waiting to see whether he truly dared. He heard a voice say, "Don't do it, you'll get in trouble." But he ignored it. His focus was fixed on the baby's shallow breathing. He swung with controlled strength. The first hit cracked the glass, a spiderweb of lines spreading instantly. The second strike shattered it completely, sending shards tumbling to the ground. Gasps rose from the small crowd, some flinching at the sound. Ignoring the sting of a small cut on his forearm, he quickly reached inside, unlocking the door. The heat that burst out hit his face like fire, stealing his breath for a moment. He pressed forward anyway. Carefully he reached for the baby, speaking softly to calm the child, though his own heart was racing. The seatbelt buckle was stiff, as if even the metal had heated under the sun, but with a quick tug, it released. He gently lifted the baby into his arms, cradling the fragile body against his chest. The child's skin was damp with sweat, hair clinging to the forehead. For a terrifying moment, the veteran feared the baby was slipping unconscious. He stepped back into the open air, fanning the baby gently, murmuring words of comfort. Relief spread through him when the little one coughed, then let out a louder, stronger cry. That sound, sharp, alive, was the most reassuring sound he had heard all day. A collective exhale came from the crowd, as if they too had been holding their breath. Some clapped, others cheered, and still more recorded, capturing the moment on their phones, but he wasn't thinking about them. His only concern was the small child now beginning to stir in his arms. He gently rocked the baby, moving toward a patch of shade under a nearby tree. A woman in the crowd rushed forward, offering a bottle of water for him to dampen a cloth and press against the baby's forehead. He nodded gratefully, dabbing the cool moisture onto the child's skin, watching as the tiny breaths grew steadier. Time seemed to slow in those moments. Around him, people were whispering words like hero and brave, but he hardly noticed. All he felt was the weight of the child against his chest and the pounding of his own heartbeat. His shirt was damp now, both from his sweat and the child's. He remembered countless drills during his service rescuing comrades, pulling people out of burning areas, carrying the wounded. Yet nothing felt quite as personal, quite as fragile, as holding that baby in his arms. He thought about how easily life could slip away if no one acted. The sight of people recording, instead of helping, replayed in his mind, but he pushed the frustration aside. He wasn't here to judge anyone else's choices. He was here because he could not turn away. This child, a stranger, had needed someone, and fate had placed him there at that exact moment. As the baby began to calm, the veteran allowed himself a small sigh of relief. He rocked gently, speaking in a low, steady voice meant to reassure. The cries softened, replaced by shallow but steady breaths. The child was safe for now, pulled back from the edge of danger. Out of the corner of his eye, he caught movement, someone sprinting across the lot. A woman, her face twisted in panic, clutching her bag as she rushed toward the car. The crowd shifted, murmuring louder. The veteran braced himself. He had expected gratitude, maybe tears of relief, but the look on her face was not what he anticipated. At that moment, he realized the rescue was only the beginning. The real storm was yet to come. The woman rushed across the parking lot, her sandals slapping hard against the pavement, her face tight with panic. The veteran, still holding the baby close to his chest, thought for a moment that she would collapse in tears of relief. He had seen this scene in his mind already, a mother falling to her knees, thanking anyone who had saved her child. But what came next took him, and everyone else watching, by complete surprise. Of reaching for her baby in gratitude. The woman's eyes locked on the shattered car window. Her expression twisted into anger. She stopped just a few steps away, pointed at the veteran, and shouted, "What did you do to my car?" Her voice was sharp, filled with fury that rang out across the lot. The veteran blinked, stunned. He had expected a cry of "thank you," not an accusation. The baby whimpered softly against his chest, but the mother didn't seem to notice. She kept her eyes on the broken glass, her voice rising louder, echoing through the crowd. "You had no right. Who told you to touch my car? Do you know how much that window costs?" A ripple of shock passed through the people gathered around. Gasps and murmurs filled the air. Several shook their heads in disbelief. One man muttered under his breath, "Is she serious?" Another woman whispered, "Her baby could have died." The veteran held the child a little tighter, his jaw firm, his face calm. Years of discipline kept him from snapping back, but inside he felt the weight of her words like stones. He looked down at the baby, whose tiny chest was rising more steadily now. That was all that mattered to him. He rocked the child gently, speaking in a low voice. "It's okay, little one. You're safe now." Then he turned his gaze back to the mother, hoping she would see reason once she realized the child had been in danger. But instead, she stepped closer, her finger still jabbing toward him. "You didn't have to break it," she yelled, her voice trembling with anger. "I was only gone for a minute. You ruined my car." The crowd could hardly believe what they were hearing. A woman standing near the front raised her voice, speaking directly to the mother. "Your baby was suffocating in there. He saved your child's life." Her tone was firm, her words cutting through the mother's complaints. Others nodded, their voices joining in. "He's a hero. You should be thanking him. That baby wouldn't have lasted much longer." But the mother's face flushed deeper with embarrassment and pride. She crossed her arms, glaring at the veteran as though he had committed a crime. The veteran said nothing, his silence speaking louder than any defense he could have made. He gently offered the baby toward her, making sure the little one was steady. The child's cries grew louder again as it reached for its mother, and at last she scooped the baby into her arms. For a brief moment, her eyes softened as she held the child close. Relief flickered across her face, but almost as quickly, it was buried again under anger. She turned back to the veteran, saying bitterly, "You didn't have to play the hero. I could have handled it." The veteran remained still, his cut arm stinging, sweat dripping down his temple. He wanted to remind her that he had called out for the parent, that no one had come, that minutes in that heat were deadly. But he swallowed the words. He had learned long ago that not every battle was worth fighting with words. The truth was already clear to everyone else standing there. The crowd shifted uneasily, their disbelief turning into frustration. Phones continued recording, capturing every second of the heated exchange. A man finally spoke up, his voice strong. "Lady, you should be hugging this man, not yelling at him. Your kid could have died." More voices rose in agreement. The mother turned, startled by how many were against her. The crowd wasn't on her side. The veteran, still calm, finally spoke, his voice low but steady. "I didn't break your car. I saved your child." The simple statement silenced the murmurs for a moment. His words weren't said in anger or pride. They were just the truth. The mother's lips tightened, her eyes darting between the veteran, the broken glass, and the crowd watching her every move. The weight of judgment pressed on her, but her pride kept her from admitting fault. She clutched her baby tightly, muttering under her breath, "You should have waited." The veteran didn't reply. He simply stepped back, wiping sweat and dust from his forehead, the sting of glass cut still fresh on his arm. The eyes of the crowd followed him, their respect for him growing stronger as the mother's reaction became more and more unbelievable. In that heated moment, the line between gratitude and anger was drawn clear for everyone to see. And though the veteran remained silent, the truth was louder than any outburst. The child was alive because he had acted. That was all that mattered, but the scene was far from over. The tension in the air only thickened as more people began stepping forward, ready to defend the man who had just risked everything for a stranger's child. Asterisk. The air around the parking lot grew heavier with tension. The baby's cries had settled into soft whimpers as the mother held the child tightly, yet her anger showed no signs of fading. She glared at the veteran as though the broken glass mattered more than the tiny life he had just saved. But the people around them had seen everything with their own eyes, and they weren't willing to stay quiet anymore. One woman, still clutching her shopping bags, stepped closer, her voice trembling but firm. "Ma'am, you don't understand. We all saw it. Your baby was in real danger." That car was like an oven. She gestured toward the sun, which still beat down relentlessly on the rows of parked vehicles. "He did what had to be done. If he hadn't acted when he did, your child might not be breathing right now." Another man, holding up his phone, added sharply, "I recorded the whole thing. You should see your baby's face in there, red, sweating, barely moving. He saved your kid's life. How can you be yelling at him?" His words drew nods and murmurs of agreement from the crowd. The mother's lips tightened, her pride battling against the truth now surrounding her. She looked down at her baby, whose small fingers clung weakly to her shirt. For a fleeting second, her expression softened, but just as quickly, it hardened again as she looked back at the shattered glass. "It's not your decision to make," she shot back, her voice rising defensively. "It's my car, my child. You don't get to decide." The veteran stood a few steps away, blood seeping lightly from the small cut on his arm, sweat still running down his face. He said nothing, his calm presence contrasting sharply with her outburst. He had learned long ago that silence could be more powerful than anger, and he let the crowd speak for him. A younger man with a baseball cap shook his head and raised his voice. "Are you listening to yourself? He didn't decide anything. He acted because you weren't here, and your baby couldn't wait. You should be on your knees thanking him." Someone else chimed in. "If he hadn't done it, we'd be calling an ambulance right now." Another woman, visibly shaken, placed a hand over her chest. "I've never seen anything like it. That baby was so close to something terrible. And he saved them." The crowd's words pressed down on the mother, leaving her cornered. She shifted uneasily, her eyes darting around as though searching for someone to back her up, but nobody did. The veteran finally spoke, his voice steady and low, carrying easily across the murmurs. "I didn't do this for thanks. I did it because your child needed help. That's all." His words silenced the group for a moment. The mother swallowed hard, clutching the baby closer, but her pride still wouldn't allow her to admit she was wrong. Instead, she muttered bitterly, "You could have waited. I was only gone a few minutes. That was the breaking point for many in the crowd. A man stepped forward, pointing toward the car. A few more minutes and your baby wouldn't be here. Do you even realize that? His voice cracked with frustration. Another added, that man risked himself, bleeding and sweating out here while you were inside. And all you care about is your car window? Phones continued recording, the moment spreading beyond the lot as dozens captured her reaction. The veteran noticed but didn't care. His focus remained on the child who was now breathing more steadily. He felt relief in knowing the danger had passed, though the mother's words still stung. Then the wail of a siren cut through the heated air. A police car pulled up, lights flashing. The officer stepped out, his presence immediately calming some of the chaos. He looked at the broken glass, the crowd, and finally the veteran with his bloodied arm. "What's going on here?" he asked firmly. Voices erupted at once, people rushing to explain, pointing at the veteran and the mother, each describing what they saw. The officer raised his hand for silence, then turned to the veteran, who spoke plainly. "There was a baby locked in that car. The heat was too much. I broke the window to get the child out." The officer's eyes moved to the mother, who clutched her baby tightly. Her face was flushed with both embarrassment and defiance. "He didn't have to break my car," she said quickly, her voice defensive. "I was coming right back." The officer studied her for a long moment, then glanced at the sweating baby in her arms. His expression hardened. "Ma'am, leaving a child in a car on a day like this is extremely dangerous. Your baby could have died. This man saved your child's life." The crowd murmured in agreement, their voices rising in support of the veteran. Some even clapped again, showing him the respect the mother had refused to give. The officer gestured toward the veteran's arm. "And he injured himself in the process. That's not damage, it's sacrifice." The veteran shifted slightly, uncomfortable with the attention. He wasn't used to praise. He had never sought it before, and he wasn't seeking it now. For him, it had been a matter of instinct, of doing the right thing when no one else stepped up. But as he looked at the faces around him, he realized this moment was no longer just about him or the baby. It was becoming something bigger. The mother stood frozen, her pride crumbling under the weight of so many voices against her. The veteran, calm as ever, simply lowered his gaze and let the truth hang in the air. Whatever happened next, he knew the child was safe. That was enough. The flashing lights from the police car painted streaks across the hot pavement, and the crowd seemed to grow quieter as the officer's words hung in the air. The mother's shoulders stiffened, her pride still refusing to bend, but the truth could no longer be denied. She clutched her baby tightly, the child pressing against her chest, cheeks still pink from the heat. Around her, dozens of eyes stared, not with sympathy, but with disbelief at her reaction. The veteran stood a few steps away, his shirt sticking to his back, his arm still bleeding lightly from the glass he had broken. He didn't move forward or try to defend himself again. He had already said everything that mattered through his actions. The child was alive. That was enough for him. The officer took a slow step closer to the mother. His tone softened but remained firm. "Ma'am, you don't seem to understand. Leaving a baby in a car, even for a few minutes, can be deadly. This man saved your child. Instead of anger, you should be thanking him." His words cut gently but directly, leaving no space for argument. The mother's face flushed deeper, a mix of shame and stubbornness. She opened her mouth as though to reply but found no words. The baby squirmed lightly in her arms, letting out a small cry, and she rocked the child automatically. The crowd murmured again, many shaking their heads, some even filming still. The veteran finally spoke, his voice calm and steady, carrying through the silence. "I didn't come here to be praised or blamed. I did what anyone should have done." He glanced around at the people holding their phones, at the many faces staring at him. A child needed help. That's all that mattered. His words resonated with the crowd. Some nodded, others clapped softly, their admiration rising above the mother's silence. For many of them, the sight of a man risking himself for a stranger's child struck something deep inside. They would remember it long after this moment passed. The officer turned back to the veteran, his expression respectful. "Sir, you did the right thing. And I want to thank you personally for stepping up when no one else did." The veteran gave a small nod, brushing off the praise, uncomfortable with the spotlight. He had never been the type to seek attention. His service years had taught him to act, not to boast. The mother shifted again, her eyes lowering to the ground as the weight of judgment pressed down on her. For the first time, her voice was softer, almost uncertain. I didn't realize it would get so hot so fast." Her words trailed off. Not quite an apology, but an admission that she had been wrong. The crowd eased slightly, though many still looked at her with disapproval. One woman near the front spoke up gently. "You're lucky he was here." "Very lucky." The mother nodded faintly, holding her baby closer, finally realizing how close she had come to losing everything. The veteran took a small step back, wiping his forehead with the back of his hand. He didn't need more words, didn't need recognition. As far as he was concerned, the moment was over. The child was safe, the danger had passed. He turned slightly, preparing to walk away, but as he moved, the officer raised his voice so everyone could hear. "Remember this," he said firmly, glancing at the crowd still holding their phones. "A car can become deadly in minutes under the sun. Today, a man saved a baby's life. Let this be a lesson to all of us about responsibility and about courage." The veteran paused for just a moment, hearing the officer's words echo behind him. Then he continued walking, his steps slow and steady, blending back into the ordinary hum of life. He didn't look back at the broken glass, the murmuring crowd, or the mother clutching her child. He didn't need to. His heart was at peace knowing he had done what was right. Later that evening, videos of the rescue began spreading across social media. Clips showed the veteran breaking the glass, pulling the baby out, and holding the child gently as the mother arrived. The part that caught the most attention, however, was not the rescue itself, but the mother's furious reaction. People everywhere debated her response, but one thing was clear: the veteran's courage overshadowed everything else. Headlines began appearing. "Veteran saves baby from hot car, mother's reaction leaves." Crowds stunned, thousands praised his quick thinking and bravery. Some called him a hero, while others pointed out the painful truth about how often bystanders choose to record rather than act. Veteran himself never sought out the videos, never commented, never stepped into the spotlight. For him, it wasn't about fame or recognition. It was about a child who had needed help and about doing the right thing when no one else would. And though he walked away quietly that day, his actions left behind a story that would be told again and again, a reminder that true courage often appears in the most unexpected places, and that sometimes the greatest battles are fought not on distant battlefields, but in ordinary moments when a single choice can mean the difference between life and loss.